Welcome back to the Everyday Fantasy Football Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Adam Stark. And of course, I'm with my boy, Eric Sonnier.
There it is.
Did I get it right? There we go. All right. After a little butchering the last couple weeks, I got my guy E's name down, so that's good to know. Chemistry
Nailed
issues are an all-time high right now.
It happens. I'm used to it.
Yeah. For me, I have a very simple Adam Stark. Can't really mess it up. Also, Iron Man's last name. So
But to say, yeah, you got Tony Stark. You're good.
Exactly. So it's very simple there. My parents made it easy on me. But we got a lot to talk about. Your boys, Saints, pulled out a nice one. Unfortunately, my Lions could not get it done. But ultimately, there are some good things to pull out from each of those games. And, of course, plenty of other games as well. So, my man, E, you want to dive right into the Saints game or what?
Oh, dude, I made the trip to Atlanta, the long couple flights.
I love it.
It was looking to be horrible. Honestly, I was like, man, I have to wake up at 6 o'clock. I didn't get home till like 1 a.m. on Sunday night because I had to go to work on Monday. So I was like, man, this flight home is about to be real rough if we keep going getting whooped like this. And then all of a sudden, man, Jameis Winston took over. It was awesome.
Crap, I was muted there for a second, but yeah, he was awesome. And you called it, man. Michael Thomas, 2 touchdowns. I was looking at the box score early, and I was like, "Oh, see, he's starting slow."
Nervous, man.
And then next thing you know, they gave him a red zone opportunity, a nice back shoulder, caught it, and then I didn't see the second touchdown, but I'm sure MT made a nice reception.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. I mean, Dennis Allen and Jameis looked kind of be off in the first few quarters. It looked like he wasn't ready to let Jameis throw. He was real timid. And then I don't know, fourth quarter he was like, all right, we're gonna lose if we don't do anything. So he's finally started to throw to Michael Thomas and Jarvis, and they took advantage. I mean, Jarvis Landry looked like he was 23. I mean, he looked awesome.
For real, man. He kind of came out of nowhere, and then also rocking the number 5, which I think that was new. Was he? I think he was rocking 80 in the preseason.
Yeah, he was. I don't know why he switched to 5. I mean, I've never.
And then
seen
who else did that? Julio Jones did that too. He was rocking 85 all preseason in training camp, and then switched to 6, and it just threw me off. But
it looked cool though. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I was like, damn, who is that dude? And I was like, wait, that's Jarvis.
Yeah, and he was making catches. He had a sick one-hand, or maybe it was two-handed, but it was a nice high point catch, big catch to I think lead the game-winning field goal.
The last drive. Yeah, it was needed, and then he ran out of bounds or something. I don't know. I was screaming my head off at this point. So it was pretty awesome though.
So the Saints squeak out a last-second win there. A solid victory for your boys. But I will say, Marcus Mariota and Drake London, they didn't look too bad. And London looks like he could be a solid guy moving forward.
I agree. I was saying that during the game. I was like, I actually put him in last minute. I was like, I'm just going to do it. He's the only one they had. And I was right, man. He was getting open across the field, and Mariota really wasn't scared to throw it like I thought he was going to be.
And then also, of course, how could I forget Cordarelle Patterson? An excellent call by you. I wasn't even thinking about the guy. I thought I would figure, Saints solid defense, always been good. No way CPAC could do anything. And sure enough, he was pretty much the heartbeat of that offense. So another good call on the end. So boys and girls, listen to our love hates because my boy E was on this week.
There's 2 things that are certain. Taysom Hill is going to destroy the Falcons, and Cordarelle Patterson is going to destroy the Saints. So
Taysom Hill,
it's always going to happen, man. I started Taysom Hill on my tight end slot at SFB, so I was pretty excited about that. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I had Kittle, and I was like, man, I don't know what to do, so I just threw Taysom and Hill in there, and he provided.
Good move. All right, let's move on to the next game. My Lions were taking on the Eagles. I, as well, was at the game, but didn't have to travel too far. Just went on down to Ford Field, and it was a good game, honestly. A lot of points scored, 38-35. Lions didn't need to settle for a field goal. We scored touchdowns on all their drives, or not all their scoring drives, I should say. So it shows me that, Goff's red zone struggles aren't as bad as they were last year because it seemed like we were getting to a lot of 4th down, 4th and 2, 4th and 3, or kicking the field goal and either taking the 3 or not getting it. So I like that we scored a lot of touchdowns. And then probably the biggest thing to take away from this game was my boy DeAndre Swift absolutely having a career day. I believe he might have had 1 or 2 better games than this, but 15 carries, 144 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown, and a long carry of 50 yards on his first carry of the game. DeAndre Swift is the real deal. And up against the Commanders this week with no Chase Young and no Phoenician something, but starting defensive tackle. Swift is due for another monster day. It's not like you'd sit him, but DFS players, he's a solid play. You got any takeaways from this Eagles game at all?
I got a couple actually. My boy, our boy Amon-Ra, man. I don't know when people are going to start thinking this dude's elite. I mean, what did he get? Like 12 targets and
led team targets.
8 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, that is solid wide receiver 1 numbers. I will take that every week to go along with that. And then on the other side, you look at is Miles Sanders going to be good this year, or is that what we're going for?
It seems like what was really working is they had an RPO, which like Jalen Hurts was just running for days on the Lions. We were not doing anything to stop him. I don't know why, but we weren't spying him or nothing. So they kept doing the RPO, and it was really like working for him. Miles Sanders was making good runs. It wasn't just, him going through big holes. He was making good plays. So Sanders, he could be a guy that could sneak into, a solid RB2 and maybe an RB1 on some weeks like this week.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of fantasy relevant people in this Eagles-Lions game. I mean, AJ Brown went off. Yep. Goddard actually, 9 points, but I mean, that's something to look forward to. Solid. I mean, everybody was scoring points. It was a high scoring game. At one point on the field, they had at Falcon Stadium, they had like this big old screens with red zone on and stuff. So, I kept looking back there, and Eagles and Lions was like always on there.
I love it. Fortunately, could not pull out the win, but I think we get it next week against the Commanders. Next up, let's jump into, of course, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. A little 4:00 action game. Rodgers seemed a bit lost without Devontae Adams, and hopefully that's the case, at least for me, because I'm a Lions fan. And for the rest of the season, hopefully Rodgers just isn't it without Adams, but I doubt that's the case. They have a nice game against the Bears this week to, get Rodgers back into things. But ultimately, the best player for the Packers was A.J. Dillon. He crazily led the team in targets, which seems like an anomaly, being the back he is, not in a receiving back, but led the team in targets and ultimately had the best fantasy performance out of, pretty much any player. Rodgers crapped the bed. The wide receivers didn't really do much, and Aaron Jones didn't do a whole lot. So it was pretty much all Vikings and all Justin Jefferson dominating this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the Packers are doing. If they don't have any receivers, they really should have Aaron Jones and Aaron Dillon on the field at the same time. I mean, they gave Aaron Jones 8 touches. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, he's still an elite back. They got to get this guy involved. I mean, you saw that drop by Christian Watson. That's huge, just heartbreaking. Yeah. I mean, Rodgers put it right in his basket. So, I mean, I can't see why teams like the Packers and the Jets don't just have all their running backs on the field at one time. So, I mean, they're their best players.
Yeah, and then also the thing with the Watson drop, that's going to give some opportunities to when Lazard gets back. He's going to get heavily targeted because Rodgers, we saw the quote earlier, if you can't catch the ball, you're not going to get on the field. And granted, Watson was a high pick, he believes in himself, says I'm making this catch 100 times out of 100, but obviously not since I just dropped it, 99 out of 100. But Rodgers himself, he just can't fully trust him yet, so.
I agree. But our boy Dubes, he kind of, he second in team in targets, so maybe that'll start going up a little bit.
Yeah, he wasn't bad. He's a guy that if he drafted has some potential still. So that's good. Justin Jefferson, is he the best wide receiver in the league, hands down?
I think so. He said he was going to do it, and he went out there and put up, 9 catches for 184 yards. That's insane. Jair Alexander's on that team, so it's not like he wasn't doing it against anybody.
Exactly, yeah. He was going up against an elite cornerback too, which was honestly pretty shocking to me. I did not expect him to just go berserk like this, but he did, and he proved that he's the best after seeing what Cooper Kupp did. I'm almost positive he not maybe had a chip on his shoulder, but he knew what he had to do, and he got it done. And then another little stat on Jefferson. He needs one more game of 150 yards to become the fastest wide receiver to hit. I forget what the stat was, but it was him and Lance Allworth had 4 150-yard games in their first 3 seasons, and he needs one more to tie Lance Allworth, and he's got the rest of the season to go. So
I can see that happening soon.
Yep, me too as well. They got the Eagles next week, so we saw it was a high-scoring game. I know Swift kind of took it to him, and it wasn't, the receiving core, but Jefferson is a beast like that, so he could easily take over.
And Kirk Cousins was doing pretty good as well. I got to give it to him. I mean, he knew what he had to do. He had to give the ball to Jefferson. He was doing it every play, so he didn't look too bad to me.
Yeah, another guy that went beast mode as well was Patrick Mahomes. Chiefs looked phenomenal. Picked right up from, where they left off. It seemed like they didn't even miss a beat from Tyreek Hill. Mahomes had 5 touchdowns, threw one of the best passes I saw all week, put it like right in the breadbasket of Mecole Hardman. And ultimately, he showed the world that I'm still the same quarterback with or without Tyreek Hill. I was the focal point. And I think that's what Mahomes was trying to prove. I've preached it all along. He's on a mission to have the best season of his career. And he just wants to prove it without Tyreek, and it'll speak volumes. If he can have the best season of his career without his potential best weapon his first year, then Mahomes will have a nice little resume to build up on. But ultimately, any takeaways from these wide receivers? Because obviously Kelsey had a big game, but the receivers were about average, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, your boy JuJu looked to be the guy, right? I mean, he had the second most targets right behind Kelsey. We both know JuJu is going to be good. So, I mean, I would look for him to be the number one. Like you were saying. You were right.
Yeah, and then also a couple of other things to take away is Pacheco. I know he outrushed CEH, but it was a blowout, and he was getting some snaps toward the end. He did look good, though, so little things like that might start to, swing it into a timeshare. But as of now, I still think CEH doesn't have it on lock, but it's kind of his job to lose. So any thoughts on CEH or Pacheco?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the stats, I mean, Clyde didn't really go off. I mean, he had 70 yards total, but it's not like, I mean,
he did what he had to do.
That shine. Right, yeah. He caught 2 touchdowns. Without those, it's really just like a modest fantasy stat point. But Pacheco, he looked pretty good. I mean, 5.2 average, 62 yards and a touchdown. I mean, if they can get that run game going with him, then I don't know. Clyde might be out of a job.
It could be interesting as well. And if Mahomes is thrown for 5 touchdowns a game too, it makes it a little bit harder to trust that run game. But then again, if they are, blowing out teams, you'd expect Clyde to get some rushes, but we didn't really see it. So who knows with this team. Let's talk.
On the other end of that, oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What do you say?
I said on the other end of that, I thought the Cardinals looked horrible. I mean, Kyler Murray really didn't get it going at all. They got kind of wrecked. I mean, Marquise Brown had 4 catches. It just didn't look like a good offense. And I just don't know if DeAndre Hopkins is the reason for that,
It was very, very odd. It was a slow start, and the Chiefs just kind of ran up the score real fast. But the one thing, honestly, to take out of it was Greg Dortch. Wide receiver came out of nowhere. He had a 26% target share, caught 7 passes for 63 yards. If he had a touchdown, that would have been a great day. He's probably still sliding under the radar on waiver wire targets just because he didn't post the big number and it was a blowout game and not a lot of people are talking about him. So if you're, if you won your matchup, you're likely down on the waiver chart. So Greg Dortch has got to look at.
I'm going to have to go take a look, actually.
I love it. All right, let's talk a wacky game, and that was the Steelers-Bengals, in which Joe Burrow just had the worst game of his career, honestly. 4 interceptions, a fumble, 5 total turnovers, but ultimately he led his team back, kept them in it, and got them to overtime. And honestly, the Bengals should have won this game. There was won or tied. There were so many little bad coaching mistakes and stupid calls by not only Zach Taylor, but just like Joe Burrow mistakes, the snapper holding the snap mistakes. It was special teams mistakes all in all. But the one thing I took away from this the most, outside of, just Jamar Chase going crazy, Joe Mixon going crazy, it was Chase Claypool got 6 carries, which blew my mind. And yes, I know Najee Harris got banged up and was kind of out of the game towards the end. But if Claypool is going to get carries like this, he could be a solid guy moving forward. And he's a guy right now that didn't really do a whole lot, but he had 6 targets and 6 carries. And that's enough, for a guy like him to warrant a maybe a trade offer, try to go get him a dynasty, or even just give him a low ball in some redraft leagues, because if you get 6 rushes, like, guys like Debo, then you're going to make him count. So Claypool, keep your eye on him. Ultimately, of course, the Bengals, Chase, Mixon, still studs there. Any comments?
It hurt. I mean, I had my SFP lineup is Justin Fields and Joe Burrow, so I didn't know interceptions were that high of points, so that really did hurt. I mean, they did not look good at all, but he started to turn it on towards the end. Jamar Chase did his thing as usual, like you said, 10 catches for 129 yards. I mean, them LSU boys are just, I try to tell y'all, they're just going off. But yeah, the really thing is, I think Joe Mixon's the new Derrick Henry, huh? I mean, what do you have, like 36 touches?
Oh my goodness,
that is insane for Joe Mixon.
Yeah, 34 touches, 36, possible touches. So,
wow, I mean that's incredible for Joe Mixon, who usually, I mean, I'm not going to say he's injury prone, but he does kind of get dinged up every now and then. So I would keep an eye on that backup.
Yeah, I will say one thing that factored into Mixon getting, this huge 7 catches for 63 yards, 9 targets, was T. Higgins got knocked out of the game pretty early. So obviously a big wide receiver threat like him going down will give some more opportunities to Mixon. We saw Boyd. He did get the touchdown too. So don't be super high on Boyd. If Higgins is back, just slot Boyd right back in as that 3 option. And maybe Mixon bumps down a little bit on these receptions. But I definitely think we do see a trend of Burrow, targeting Mixon and dump offs and kind of just trusting him, because 7 catches for 63 yards, that is very trustworthy. And Joe Burrow doesn't, not notice that.
Agreed. When he was playing with Clyde, he was pretty good running option.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, another wacky game. This was a tie, ironically, and that was the Texans versus the Colts. The Colts they cannot win week 1. I think it's been like the last 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 weeks. It's been a long time since the Colts have won their week 1 matchup. At least they didn't lose this week. They tied. So I guess that's some improvement. But all in all, Jonathan Taylor kind of looked his usual self, 31 carries, 161 yards. Love it. Love to see that Nyheim Hines wasn't really factoring in the run game. He was just his usual receiving pass catcher. Michael Pittman showed he's a beast, 9 catches, 121 yards. And then on the Texans side, Davis Mills kind of showed he could sling it. And then Dameon Pierce, Rex Burkhead. Give me your thoughts, E. What's going on?
I was looking at some stuff today because obviously, as I've talked in the show before, I've liked Dameon Pierce. So I was looking at some stuff, and they said Lovie Smith wanted him to be the guy. He wants him to get those carries, but with the game script as the way it was, they said Dameon Pierce isn't ready to be the blocker and isn't ready to be that receiver yet. So they want Rex Burkhead on the field because he can do both of those things. So with as bad as the Texans are, Maybe I might have been a little bit wrong about Dameon Pierce for now, just because if the game script's going to be like that, then I don't think he'll be on the field as much.
He really could be a guy that blossoms in the second half and is the second half playoff winner, kind of helps you out quite a bit, in which he might find himself on waivers, because if Burkhead, keeps this 70-30 share going on, I will say Pierce did have 11 touches, 33 yards. Not the best. Burkhead didn't do a whole lot better. 14 carries, 40 yards. But ultimately, Burkhead did have 8 targets. That was kind of the big difference. And Dameon Pierce just had 1. So they obviously trust Burkhead a lot more in all aspects. He's kind of like the all reliable on this team. And they don't really have any other running back options. The only running backs that touched the ball were Dameon Pierce and Rex Burkhead. So they let Marlon Mack go. Marlon Mack's on the Colts. They cut someone though. I forget who
it was Marlon Mack. It was Marlon Mack. They cut. He was on the team in the off season. They put him on the practice squad.
And then O.J. Howard. This was a weird one. He had 2 touchdowns, 2 targets. So leave him for the other people to pick up on waivers. This was just a little freak thing. I expect Brandon Cooks to be getting these touchdowns. And I even think Brandon Cooks, he went down on the 10-5. They ran super good flea flicker play. Never see flea flickers in the NFL, but Texans decided to bust it out. Lovie Smith was feeling his college self, and they ran it to perfection. So
Mr. Reliable, man. Brandon Cooks, 12 targets. If you drafted him, he's back. He's going to be the same guy.
Oh, yeah. 12 targets. I want to say he had like a 33%, 32% target share. I have it right here. 32% target share. Yeah. So, Cooks, you love to see that. He had the 8th best target share out of all receivers in the NFL. So, when you have that target share, you're always a solid option. But let's head on over to the next game. Baker Mayfield making his return to not the Cleveland Stadium, but the Cleveland team, I guess. They faced off against each other, and Baker couldn't get the last laugh. He fell short in his first game, and it was tough because I thought Baker was going to come out, just dominate. He had, weapons like CMC and DJ Moore, and he just kind of fell a little flat. I will say, the Browns did look a little bit better than I expected with, Jacoby Brissett at the quarterback, but they just kind of ran it through Hunt and Chubb. And if those guys are on, then they're kind of a tough team to beat no matter who the quarterback is. So ultimately, the one thing I took away the most from this was two players in this game. I think there was only like 4 or 5 players out of all NFL games played 100% of snaps. And Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore both played 100% of the snaps for the Panthers. So if Robbie Anderson's on your waiver wire, he had 5 catches, 102 yards, a target or a touchdown, and led the team in targets. So no more Sam Darnold, ladies and gentlemen. It's Baker Mayfield. And maybe he likes Robbie over DJ Moore. That could be the case. So he's a guy I would definitely like to target on the waivers. Any thoughts on this Browns-Panthers matchup?
Yeah, man, it's the running backs in this one for me. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, he was his first action. He didn't get hurt, so we can all say, thank you, God. He's healthy. He's back. He didn't really get a lot of touches. I mean, he only had 14 touches. He did score a touchdown to salvage the fantasy, but hopefully he gets going because, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't give him the ball when you have Baker Mayfield. But Nick Chubb, he went off again. No touchdown, but, 141 yards is pretty nice. But like you said, Kareem Hunt, man, those 2 touchdowns, I kept looking. I was like, man, this dude's just going to vulture every Nick Chubb touchdown. He's going to do all the hard work, and then Kareem Hunt's going to take it in. But at this point, I think both of them are startable.
I think so too. Yeah. And it kind of showed a lot of, Hunt owners that, hey, this guy's actually probably flexing him. He's a solid play. So
for sure.
Hunt, definitely a solid play. And honestly, I think he's going to be a solid play next week as well. I just like the tandem there. The Jacoby Brissett, I don't think they trust him a whole lot, and it's going to be ran through Chubb and Hunt. One other thing I noticed, Donovan Peoples-Jones, he did dominate in the target share as well. He had a 32% target share, out-targeted Amari Cooper 11-6, out-received him 6-3. So Jacoby Brissett, like I said, with Baker Mayfield liking Robbie Anderson better, Jacoby Brissett might like DPJ better. He had 6 for 60. If he would have had a touchdown, it would have been a great day for him, and he would have been popping all over your waiver wire. But as of now, he finished 10th in target share amongst all wide receivers. So DPJ, maybe not an automatic, bid this week, but definitely a guy to keep your eye on. And if you got deep benches or big leagues, then DPJ would be a solid guy to snag.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk a little Tua, because he has just dominated Bill Belichick, which seems to sound crazy, but he's 4-0 against the Patriots. And part of that is just because no Tom Brady, maybe? I don't know. But all in all, Tua has played great against them. You add on Tyreek Hill, so it's like, how are you going to lose? Hill had a solid game, 8 catches, 94 yards, did not get the touchdown. It went to Waddle, which was kind of interesting. Waddle, honestly, if he doesn't get this touchdown and the touchdown goes to Tyreek, Waddle has probably a disappointing day. 4 catches, 69 yards. Not disappointing, but not a good day, I'll say. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. If Waddle does become touchdown dependent, definitely don't, always throw him in your lineup. Maybe just keep your eye on it. But ultimately, both these wide receivers are still going to be good. Tua didn't play terrible. I know he had that terrible, terrible underthrow pass. But other than that, 27 win over the Patriots. And was there anything to take away from this Patriots team?
I mean, they were just not good. Like you said, maybe the Dolphins just have their number, but they didn't. I mean, the running backs, as we know, they split touches right down the middle between Stevenson and Harris. Neither one of them looked impressive. Mac Jones, I think he might have hurt his back, but I think he'll be okay. I think I read it was just spasms. So if you do have to start him, he will be available. But other than that, I mean, the only one I would really look to start on the Patriots offense right now would be maybe Jacoby Myers just from the target share. But you know how he is. He doesn't score any touchdowns. So I would just, if I were you guys, I would stay away from the Patriots offense for now. I did see that Kendrick Bourne might start getting some more playing time, but I would wait and see on that as well.
I agree. They're just hard to trust right now, and especially with all this timeshare going on and no elite wide receiver and no elite quarterback, and the defense isn't really what it was if you got defenses on your leagues. So ultimately, Patriots are kind of just a no-go for me. Not necessarily a team that, you know, if your quarterback's playing them, that like, oh, I got to auto start that quarterback, but they're kind of just, I'll keep them in purgatory right now. Let's head into a minor blowout, but Ravens versus Jets. Lamar Jackson, he looked pretty good. He bounced, I should say bounced back, but he came back and had a 17 for 30 game, 3 touchdowns. He did not rush it a whole lot, which was one thing that kind of surprised me. He had 6 carries for 17 yards, which I don't have any stats on me to look, but I feel like that's probably one of the lowest, if not the lowest, rushing day of his career. 17 yards just seems super low for Lamar Jackson, but he got the job done. 24-9. He spread the ball out nicely to all his receivers, Bateman, Duvernay, and Andrews. Andrews led the team in targets. Duvernay had 2 touchdowns, and Bateman had the long touchdown of 55 yards. So they all kind of got in there to eat, but it could get a little bit murky. Bateman only had 2 catches. If he doesn't get that big 55-yarder, then he's not a great play this week. So some things to keep an eye on for the Ravens wide receivers. The Jets, on the other hand, they were pretty all around. Breece Hall led the team in targets. Michael Carter led the team in carries. Joe Flacco just did not play well. Are there any Jets right now that you're looking to start or looking to trade for or have, I guess?
I think the only startable Jet right now might be actually Michael Carter, just for now. I mean, he's getting the touches. He did only have 10 carries for 60 yards, which is, I mean, that's some good points right there. But he also had 7 catches for 40 yards. So if you started Michael Carter this week, you were pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
I think Breece Hall will start to take over eventually. But for right now, I think only Jet right now I would start is Michael Carter. Because even Elijah Moore, he had 7 targets, but 49 yards isn't going to cut it.
I agree. And especially while Joe Flacco's at quarterback, he's just, we know who Flacco is. This is kind of, its games are going to be very similar to this. He'll put up maybe 1 to 2 touchdowns a game. He's never going to be able to, you know, put up the 4 touchdown games, in which Zach Wilson might be able to do. He does have that upside. We've seen it once or twice in the past, but it's Flacco right now. And the only other guy outside of Michael Carter that I would maybe consider starting, and especially in PPR, Breece Hall. And that's just because he led the team in targets. If he becomes, you know, a similar player to what, you know, Javonte Williams was doing, or Saquon or AJ Dillon leading their teams in targets, it's a nice thing to have. And Breece Hall is a big playmaker, so he could take any of these little receptions to the house, or even, you know, one of his 6 carries to the house. So he's not a guy that I'm locking in, but I keep him in the back of my mind, especially if the matchup's right.
Absolutely. Speaking of Javonte, though, that Broncos Seahawks game, man, that was some pretty crazy stuff. Did you expect that at all?
Not one bit. I'm repping the Seahawks right now. Wearing the Seahawks shirt right now. Shout out to my aunt, big Seahawks fan. But ultimately, I was expecting Russell Wilson to come in, cook, dominate. I was expecting Javonte just to be grounded pound. That first drive, I was, oh my gosh, ecstatic. I was ready for a huge blowout. Javonte Williams to rush for 120 yards and hit all my bets, but it just, Vegas came calling, and I'm convinced. Vegas called Nathaniel Hackett and was like, hey, buddy, you can't win this game. We will give you a blank check. You just fill out whatever number. You don't tell anyone, but you can't win this game. And by that, I mean, I know I'm going a lot of speculation, but there was so many bets on the Broncos, tons of teasers, tons of parlays that needed the Broncos to finish it off. And of course, the cherry on the top was the awful coaching at the end, where Hackett doesn't call one of his 3 timeouts to, you know, go for a 4th and 5 or what. And not even Nathaniel Hackett. It was Javonte Williams. There was a few times where he would try to get an extra couple yards instead of going out of bounds or just like fighting to stay in bounds. Like he had no clock awareness. So that's one thing that as an NFL watcher, I keep an eye on, but as a fantasy watcher, I'm just like, whatever, it is what it is. So ultimately, this game was one of the fishier games to me. It was just so weird. A 1-point victory. I don't know. It was weird, but our boy Javonte, he led the team in targets. Melvin Gordon did lead the team in rushes, but Javonte Williams, I liked what I saw. He had a phenomenal average. I want to say it was like 8 to 9 yards per carry. But the one thing that stood out to me was all the targets he had. He led the team in targets with Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and this was a team that Russell Wilson was not targeting his wide receivers early on. It was tight ends and running backs. It was really weird, but Javonte Williams, 12 targets. That's enough for me. 11 catches, 65 yards. Anytime he's got the ball in his hands, if it's a rush attempt, if it's a catch, I will take it. So for me, don't be concerned about just the 7 carries for 43 yards. That's fine for me.
I was watching the Eli Payton podcast form of the game last night, which was good. But they had Shannon Sharp on at the end. I think he said exactly right. The Broncos need to leave Javonte Williams in the game. Like he doesn't need to be coming out. Melvin Gordon, cool. He averaged 5 yards a carry, but this dude, Javonte Williams is clearly a stud. Like if you really watched him run last night, every time he touched it, it was 10 yards. It was 10 yards every time. I think he hit one safety so hard that dude's number 27, his arm's broken. Like he walked off the field like limping, and Javonte just trucked him. Like,
I saw that. He completely trucked him, and I was like, oh my God, he just took his shoulder out of the socket.
And he didn't play in the preseason. How can somebody get in a rhythm as a running back, getting 7 carries for the entire game? And every time he does something good, Melvin Gordon comes in. Shannon Sharp was like, and they're big Broncos fans. He was like, man, Javonte Williams needs to stay in the game, and Melvin Gordon only needs to come in when Javonte is tired for a play or two until he's ready to come back in. And I completely agree. He looked dominant.
And I will say, Melvin Gordon did show that he still had some juice. But imagine Melvin Gordon constantly being fresh when Javonte's tired, because that's what you get Melvin Gordon coming in playing probably like 30-ish snaps when Javonte, rips off a 50-yard run, gets him in the red zone. Then you get fresh legs Melvin Gordon going up against, the defense that's just taken a beating against, the quarterback, running back, whoever's been, pushing the ball down the field. And then Melvin Gordon can just finish it off. And honestly, I think these guys, they could work out as a phenomenal tandem. I don't know what Nathaniel Hackett's going to do. I've lost all respect for him as a head coach. Completely disappointing game. But
that end game, you have Russell Wilson and you try to go for a 64-yard kick. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it was so like, I get McManus has the leg, but you're also like on the road in the loudest stadium in the NFL, probably. So you
traded all your team for the next 3 years to get Russell Wilson. Keep him in the game. Let him get some points for you.
And then the other funny thing was that I noticed Javonte Williams, he got like an extra 7 yards because he got kind of tapped in the backfield. And if he only gains, 2-3 yards, stays in bounds, then it's weird because they call timeout for sure, because there's no way you're kicking like a 68-yard, 70-yard field goal with 20 seconds left or 50 at the time. So
they had 3 timeouts. Just call the timeout, talk about the 4th down play, make the conversion, and then kick the easy field goal for the win. Like I'm not an NFL coach. I didn't even play football in high school, but I can pick that.
Yeah, and then of course the next day Hackett comes out and says, we probably should have went for it. And I was like, you think?
Yeah.
Absolute terrible. But on the Seahawks side, Geno Smith, he didn't, his stats looked great. But if you watch the game, he was just hitting the open guys. He wasn't making phenomenal throws. He was just doing exactly what he had to do. And honestly, that's good enough for me. If you have, or if you're in a super flex league, 2-quarterback league, and Geno is somehow still on waiver wires, and I would bid a pretty penny for him. Or, if you're got the top claim, then Geno Smith would probably be up there. Another guy that did pretty well, Rashad Penny, 12 carries, 60 yards. if he can stay healthy, he should be pretty good. But Kenneth Walker, my Michigan State man, should be coming back this week. Pete Carroll already said he's going to be returning to practice. He was I believe, second-round pick for the Seahawks, maybe third, but nonetheless, high draft capital and solid investment for them, and he'll get his opportunity. So as long as, Penny just stays the course, I think he can be a viable running back. I don't think K9 is going to come in and steal this outright. And then if you look at the receiving core, I hate to say it, but I think Tyler Lockett's kind of left for dead. It's going to be pretty much the tight ends, and DK Metcalf is really what it seemed like. We saw Cody Parkinson, if you even heard of him, get 2 targets and a touchdown. Will Dissly, who tore his Achilles and has, played just a minimum of games the last 3 years, had 3 targets and a touchdown. And then you had Noah Fant, the guy they got in the Broncos trade, a legit tight end with 4 targets, leading all tight ends in targets. So very odd game. Ultimately, the only 2 guys I think I can trust right now are DK and maybe Penny, but it's tough.
Yeah, from what I was looking at the game, the only reason DK didn't have more yards because Surtain was on him. I mean, but DK was just catching the ball over him like it was nothing.
Yeah,
like,
it was cool. He was bullying him.
He was really bullying him, but obviously he's on top of him, so he's making a tackle. So I think in the future games, DK Metcalf is going to go off as just like the dump off option. I mean, it looked like Gino would say Hunt, throw it right to him, which if I had a 6'4" receiver that's 240 and runs a 4.2, that's what I would do as well. So I like Metcalf. I knew I shouldn't have traded him.
Yeah, he's a beast. But ultimately, it wasn't a great fantasy performance. I mean, 7 for 36. Right. So if you're in PPR, not a complete stinker, but if you're in a standard league, then he pretty much stunk the bed for you. So he's pretty much going to be touchdown dependent, which I think is going to be the key for DK. Let's wrap things up with the last 2 games. The Sunday Night Football game, the Cowboys and the Bucks. Dak Prescott goes down, has the thumb injury, in which I don't know if you caught this, but I laughed so hard when Chris Collinsworth is like, they wear padded helmets now for the quarterback when they throw the ball so that they hit the padded helmet. It protects the quarterback's thumbs. And Chris Collinsworth, I don't know if he was just super tired because he seemed very off. A lot of people were tweeting about him being tired, all this crap. But no, that is not what the helmets are used for. They said it in Hard Knocks, literally. It's for CTE. It's made like 70% of hits be less impactful, something like that. There's some science behind it, but it is for CTE and practices and scrimmages and, crossover practices and stuff like that, because they're still going, 90, 100% head on, helmet to helmet. And if you could take all of that out and just have the games, there's only 17 games a year. So helps out a lot, but no, Chris Collinsworth is not for the quarterback's thumbs.
Right.
Go ahead. Give me some takeaways.
So, I guess some takeaways from this game is I didn't get to watch it. I was on a plane on the way back, so I actually didn't get to watch this game. But I went back some highlights. I personally don't think either quarterback looked good to begin with. Dak barely reached 100. He didn't even reach 150 yards, and he looked bad before he went down. So I don't know what was going on with him. And I think Tom Brady's starting to show a little bit of age. I don't know if it's because of the offensive line, or what was going on about that. But Tom Brady did not look too good. But I did know that my boy Leonard Fournette, he looked real good. I mean,
yes, sir.
He wanted to shut up them haters by calling him fat. 21 carries, 127 yards. He really helped this Buck offense get off the ground because I didn't think Tom Brady was doing too hot.
Yeah, he wasn't. And it wasn't so much Brady. It was like he would march him down the field and they would get stalled out in the red zone. And honestly, you weren't missing much. It was like a field goal fest. There was 1 touchdown scored. Granted, it was a sick Mike Evans, back of the end zone, one-handed grab. But ultimately, it was field goal after field goal after field goal. Not a single touchdown in the first half. It was brutal. So it was nice to see Lenny go out there for 21, 127, pretty much dominate the backfield. Rachaad White did get 6 carries, but only had 14 yards with him. So I don't expect him to, and have an increased role in carries. So if Fournette can stay at 20 carries and, he only did have 2 receptions, but I expect that to go up, especially with, Godwin. He's going to be missing a couple weeks, re-aggravating that leg. I know it's not an ACL, but it's from the ACL hamstring injury. Mike Evans had a solid game, the best game probably out of all these players, I would have to say. Fournette did have a solid game, but Evans was maybe a little bit better. 5 for 71, a touchdown, 7 targets, led the team in targets. Seems like it's going to be the Mike Evans show moving forward. Julio Jones, though, he showed he still has some juice in the tank. 3 catches, 69 yards. 5 targets. I expect him to get a little bit more usage with Godwin being out. And then he had 2 carries for 17 yards, which was surprising as well. It showed that Todd Bowles has some faith in Julio Jones because we know this man's kind of glass. And if you're going to give him touches in the backfield, that's a for sure, hit that he's going to be taking. So interesting there. Zeke didn't do a whole lot. We called it there, 10 for 52. If he would have got a touchdown, then he would have made it right. But ultimately, I wasn't sold on him. And of course, Pollard, 6 for 8, a brutal game for him. I know Mike McCarthy did say he wants to get him more involved. Pollard did line up quite a few times outside as a receiver, just running routes. So his snap percentage is respectable. But ultimately, without Dak Prescott, are you trusting any of these Cowboys right now?
That's gonna be hard. The only one that I could think about starting would maybe be Dalton Schultz, just because of the having a backup quarterback. He's gonna see a lot of targets. But even with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb he had 11 targets, but he had 2 catches. What's going on with CeeDee Lamb, man? I just don't see. Too. Yeah, he is an elite receiver. I just don't see how you're not targeted. You are targeting this guy. He's just not catching the ball, apparently. I wonder what's going on with him.
Yeah, it was weird. And then also Jalen Tolbert, he was a healthy scratch, which was super odd. We had guys, I don't even know this guy's first name, Dennis Houston out of Western Illinois, rookie, start over him. And then Noah Brown made his way onto the field, earning 9 targets as well, which was a little surprising. So ultimately, Schultz is probably the only one that I could trust. CD, granted, he did get the targets, but didn't do nothing with it. Yeah, super, super weird. Probably his worst game of his career. Hopefully he bounces back nicely against the Bengals next week. But the Bengals, they themselves are trying to bounce back as well. So it's going to be an interesting game. And then, of course, no Dak no Dak with Cooper Rush being in. So that will be an interesting one. Let's wrap things up with these recaps with where it all started. And that's Buffalo Bills versus the Los Angeles Rams, Thursday Night Football. We called it. We said Gabe Davis was going to have his breakout moment, had the first touchdown of the game, had a couple other big 50-yard catch leading down the 1-yard line, seemed to be a solid receiver for Josh Allen. And ultimately, the Bills came to play, and the Rams, it seemed like Cooper Kupp was the only guy that came to play.
Man, I don't know if you guys saw what I saw, but Matt Stafford looked bad. He looked like his arm is done. I hope that's not the case, but he looked like he was scared to throw the ball. As a Drew Brees fan, I know when his arm started to go, he started to just check down as much as he could, and that's what I saw out of Matt Stafford. But instead of the running back dump off, he was hitting Cooper Kupp. But I don't think he threw a pass over 20 yards the whole entire game. And even when they were down 28-7, they were still just running the ball and dumping it off. So if I was an owner of Allen Robinson, Tyler Higbee, maybe I would be scared because it looks like he's only going to be relying on Cooper Kupp because of that I think it was his elbow, right?
Yeah, his elbow, and it was a thing that during the during the off season, there was Matthew Stafford is taking a week off because of elbow flareness, and then he had a procedure. He got a training procedure. He went through therapy that was the same therapy as Tommy John's therapy. So it was interesting, and I'm sure I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but Tommy John's is the death sentence for pitchers. So
that's actually what I pitched in high school and I hurt my shoulder, and so that's what I'm saying. I know when you could tell when somebody's hurting, and he's hurting, and that's not good. That arm pain does not go away. He doesn't have any off weeks. He will be throwing. He has to throw in practice in the games to keep going. I'm nervous if I'm an owner of anybody but Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, as an Allen Robinson owner, I'm very nervous. The alarms start going off, especially after what happened last year. He is a guy that's just going to sit on my bench, unfortunately, until he has, honestly, probably 2 games in a row. Like there could be a fluky, he gets a big 40-yard touchdown and then 2 other catches for 20 yards and that's 60 yards and a touchdown. You think, oh, he's back. But like, no, it was just this one nice play where he was like wide freaking open or something like that. So yeah, as a Lions fan who owns the Rams first round pick this year, I kind of like it. I hope Stafford just kind of, I don't want to root for Stafford's downfall, but like you said, you could start to notice it, and it's giving me flashbacks of his final season in Detroit, in which when his body starts to break down, he just is not a good quarterback, and we really saw it here. He had 3 interceptions, QBR of 23. He looked really bad, and this was a game where the Rams banner ceremony, ring ceremony, opening game against a good team, Bills home. This was their moment, and they just ultimately kind of shit the bed. So.
I mean, honestly, it wasn't even just Stafford. I think their defense was bad. Cam Akers obviously was the story of the game, and he barely played because of how horrible he was playing to begin with. So yeah, I'm scared of the Rams right now, man. As a Saints fan, I love it, but as a fantasy owner, man, it's definitely hard to watch. It's coming from the number 1 offense from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. If you guys need some extra fantasy football help, you can head on over to Fantasy Six Pack, where they're still offering their season passes. You can get great stuff like Discord chats, dynasty rankings, current draft rankings, access to custom advice from our experts, and plenty of more stuff. So go on over to fantasy6pack.net to check out their season passes. And of course, if you're watching this, give us a subscribe or a like or something that will help us out for Fantasy Six Pack, the YouTube page. But let's talk a little injuries real quick, and then we can head on into our start sits. There's a couple injuries. Keenan Allen, he's not looking good for Thursday Night Football. Najee, good news for him. X-rays came back negative. He's looking like he's going to play. Elijah Mitchell, really bad news for him, looking out 2 months. So it's going to be Jeff Wilson, Tyrone Davis-Price, or who knows, Jordan Mason maybe. But also Chris Godwin rushed back too early. He's likely going to miss 2 to 4 weeks. So out of, any of these guys, what player is impacted the most? So like what backup, benefits the most out of all of these injuries?
It's got to be like the one you said, man, Jeff Wilson. Elijah Mitchell is the starting running back for that team. You always want the backup of a starting running back if the running back goes down. So that's obviously the one you should go for, Jeff Wilson. And if you can't get him, I would look into maybe getting, like you said, Robbie Anderson. He was on the field 100% of the game. You got to love that. The targets are going to come.
Yeah, of course. And honestly, I hate to say it, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Commanders wide receivers. Dotson, as a rookie, had 2 touchdowns. Can't ignore that. If he's Wentz's guy, then he's Wentz's guy. Curtis Samuel he had the game that we've all wanted him to have. Is actually being used in the receiving aspect. So if either of those guys are on your waiver wire, they were going to be solid plays against a Lions defense who just didn't really have too many answers to. Granted, it was AJ Brown, but fast, speedy receivers. So. Let's do a little love-hate. Let's start off the quarterbacks. I'm going to go first. One quarterback I think is going to bounce back, and part of it is because he was playing in just a mud bath, a tsunami. That's Trey Lance. We saw the conditions at Soldier Field and Justin Fields' Penguin sliding through 2 feet of water on the field. I chalked that game up as just kind of like, you can't really, take a lot from it. The one thing I did take from it was I believe Trey Lance had, 13 rush attempts, which shows me he's not afraid to be mobile. He is this running mobile quarterback that we thought he was. So for me, I'm liking Trey Lance in a big bounce back game.
Okay. For me, I'm going to tell you all that something that LSU fans learned back in college. Joe Burrow's got that dog in him. He just had a horrible game. He just had as everybody learned last year, he has that fight in him, man. This year, I plan on him coming out next game. I think they're playing against who are they playing against?
Cowboys. So
Cowboys. So, yeah, they're playing against the depleted Cowboys. I expect Joe Burrow to bounce back in a big way this week.
Absolutely, man. And the Cowboys, yeah, like you just said, they're going to be without Dak, without their starting tackle. CD might not be looking the best. Michael Gallup still banged up. Granted, those are all offensive players, but if their offense isn't, doing much, then it's going to be the Joe Burrow show. I agree. I think Burrow is going to have a huge bounce back game. Mm-hmm. Do not bench him, even if you got, a Kirk Cousins or a Matt Ryan as your QB2, and they had a great game. Joe Burrow, he's going to bounce back and have, honestly, probably like a 4-touchdown game. Another guy I was just talking about him, Carson Wentz. He's playing my Lions, and unfortunately, the secondary isn't the best for Detroit. We're still missing our third-string quarterback, Jerry Jacobs, who plays a lot better than a third-string cornerback, and Jeff Okudah coming off the Achilles. Granted, he did play well against Devonta Smith. It was pretty much just, Jalen Hurts picking out who he wanted. Guys were getting open. So Carson Wentz, I'm liking him. Granted, he is a very up and down type player, so he definitely could have a down week, but I'm doubling down on Wentz.
Okay. Last one I like is I like actually going back to the Matt Ryan thing. He's playing against the Jags. They just had a tie, so I think they're going to be looking to come out and get that first W. Michael Pittman is showing that he is an elite wide receiver one, like I've been saying. And you got Jonathan Taylor as well. So I think Matt Ryan's going to have at least a 2 to 3 touchdown game. So if you liked what you saw last week, I think you're going to like a lot more this week, especially against the Jags.
I agree. And then not to mention they're going interdivision again. They just tied. Can't imagine they want to settle for anything other than a win. So
right.
Colts are going to be coming in strong, I can imagine. Let's talk some running backs. One running back, I'm hammering these Commanders, and I shouldn't be because I'm a Lions fan, but I just saw what Antonio Gibson did. He had 7 catches for 63 yards. He was finally utilized in the pass game. Maybe this is I don't even know because they drafted a rookie wide receiver. Curtis Samuel was being used. And of course, they still have Terry McLaurin. So if Antonio Gibson can get incorporated into a pass game and Brian Robinson's still out, this is going to be huge for him. He was a former wide receiver at Memphis. He can catch the ball. He had a phenomenal catch in the game last week. So Antonio Gibson, I really like him in the passing aspect and just all around this week, especially against my Detroit Lions.
Yeah. One that I like, or actually two, is I'm going to go ahead and say Michael Carter and maybe Breece Hall if you're getting a little desperate. Coming off those targets, like you were saying, they're both going to see a lot of the pass game because, like you said, you have Joe Flacco. I do not think that Zach Wilson's coming back this week, right? I don't think. So I think that Michael Carter and Breece Hall are both going to see a bunch of targets. And if anything, they're playing the Browns, so maybe they'll get a lot of the run game as well.
Yeah, that's a solid call. Michael Carter, he Robert Saleh said, he's the heartbeat of the offense. So that speaks volumes when your coach says that. One guy that I kind of like, he's a sneaky pick, deep leagues, Jamaal Williams. He had 2 touchdowns, kind of vultured Swift a couple times, 11 carries. I will say he got a lot more touches than he probably should have. Swift just looked way better. But if this is the game script against the Commanders, poor, run defense where James Robinson averaged 6.6 coming off a torn Achilles, and ETN, I think, averaged over 5 yards coming off of his injury. I think, Jamaal Williams should have a solid game, and DeAndre Swift should have a phenomenal game. So I'm liking both Lions running backs.
Absolutely. The other one I'm liking is either I think I'm going to go with Kareem Hunt. As we were talking about earlier, Kareem Hunt is just going to vulture Nick Chubb's touchdowns all game, and you know that Nick Chubb's going to get down to that 1 yard line. They're playing on the opposite of that. They're playing the Jets, so I think there'll be plenty of opportunities. I think Hunt can get a couple catches, and I like his chances this week to score a touchdown.
Yeah, and then one other guy I'm going to throw out there is Jeff Wilson. If you can grab him off waivers, I love him this week. We just saw what Javonte Williams did against the Seahawks. 49ers playing Seahawks, and Jeff Wilson was the receiving back when Elijah Mitchell went down. I don't have the stats right on me, but I know he was targeted quite a bit. So the Seahawks let up 12 targets to Javonte Williams. If Jeff Wilson sniffs anywhere around that, then he should have a solid fantasy day. All right, E, give me a running back that you're not so hot on. I see you got your boy Alvin Kamara. The ribs getting to him or the Bucks getting to him?
The Bucs have a really good run defense. I will say that. They held Zeke to 50 yards, Pollard to, like you said, 9. Alvin Kamara, he did kind of ding himself up a little bit in the ribs. I do think he'll end up playing, but I think even in the past couple of years when Alvin Kamara plays against the Bucs, he doesn't really have the best game unless he catches a few balls. So it hurts me, but yeah, I think Alvin Kamara is somebody that if you can avoid, I would try to.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation too because it's like one of those that if you do start him and he goes out and puts up 3 points, you're gonna be like, damn it, I knew this, I should have just But then again, it's like you always start your studs. So if you do have like if you got a guy like I hate to say it, Jeff Wilson or Kareem Hunt, might consider it. I might consider it, depending on what your matchup's looking like. If you want to go for boom or bust, or a safe spot. But one running back that I see you did have on our love list, but I'm not a big fan this week. That's Cordarelle Patterson. I'm expecting Damian Williams to be back. He did start the game. He had 2 rushes right off the bat and then got injured, was ruled out the rest of the game. So if he comes back, he'll be impactful too. And then their rookie they drafted, Tyler Algier, was a healthy scratch who I can't imagine he'll be a healthy scratch again, especially with Damian Williams being banged up. They pretty much had to have Cordarelle Patterson be the focal running back. He was kind of doing it all. But CPAT, he could have a solid game. I mean, don't get me wrong. He still is a guy that has a lot of volume upside. But for me, against the Rams, the Rams are home again. They lost against the Bills. They're going to be hungry. They know they got to get this win. It's a bad Falcons team. And then also, Kyle Pitts didn't have the best game. So if he gets incorporated, he could easily take over and, steal some touches. So.
See, I put him on the love list for just about the opposite. I think the Rams will end up crushing him. I do agree with that.
That's kind of what I thought, the garbage time.
Yeah, right. So I think that Cordarelle Patterson will get a lot of catches because I think that Jalen Ramsey will probably end up either going on Drake London or Kyle Pitts, whichever one they fear more, which probably will be Pitts. So I think that with them losing like that, I think Cordarelle Patterson will have a lot of chances to catch the ball out of the backfield. That's kind of my reasoning. I don't think he's going to obviously rush for 100-something yards every single week. But this week, while they're going to be down, I think the game script will be in his favor.
All right, E. Let's make our first bet of the season. I'm going to start keeping tally on all these. Cordarelle Patterson, does he finish as a top 18 running back?
18? I'm going to say yes, 100%.
All right. I think it'll be close. I think he'll be right around there. I think he's got a great shot to finish inside that 24 range, but I think he's going to be right at that back half. So we'll mark that down. So top 18, I'll say half PPR because I think if it was full PPR, you'd get that. Another running back that I do not like this week is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He got his bread and butter off of 2 touchdown catches. So you can't always bank on touchdown catches when you're a running back. We did see, Pacheco get a little more involved. Granted, he was a blowout, like I mentioned earlier, but still, he showed that he can handle the rock, score touchdowns, break off 20-yard carries. So it would not shock me one bit if Andy Reid was like, you know what, let's give this guy a few extra carries this week. And then next thing you know, if Pacheco proves it on those carries, he'll only, chip at CEH's total. And then, of course, you still have Jerick McKinnon, who had a few touches in the game as well, and he won't go away until he's injured. So that's that.
I agree. Without those 2 touchdowns, Clyde is irrelevant in fantasy this week.
All right, let's pop into the wide receivers. Give me one guy that you're really high on this week because there's quite a few.
I like Courtland Sutton this week. I like him to bounce back. I didn't see him get a target until about the second quarter yesterday, but then he started making a lot of good acrobatic, trustful catches, gaining the respect of his quarterback one. He ended up with, I think, either the most or the second most targets on the team. Courtland Sutton looks really good, and as long as he can stay healthy, I think he will be a really good option this week.
Yeah, I like Sutton too. What he was doing, phenomenally, he was sitting down in the zone. He was finding the soft spots where Russell Wilson would get out, look for the receivers, and a lot of receivers kind of just, they don't get open. And Devontae Adams was one of the best at it. He would always find the open spot, and that's probably why Rodgers, or he helped out Rodgers so much because he was always open. Rodgers to make the right throw. So, Courtland Sutton, the more he just finds those open spots and makes it easier for Russ, the more Russ is going to start to grow on him. My boy Andrew Erickson, Fantasy Pros guy, has been super high, beating the drum for Courtland Sutton. And honestly, I think he's going to continue this. This Seahawks game was very weird. Russell Wilson, like you mentioned, he didn't target his wide receivers until like the second half. It might have been, right at the end of the second quarter. Can't remember completely, but it took a long time for a wide receiver to get a target. It was actually the Jerry Jeudy 66-yard touchdown. That was his first target to a wide receiver, believe it or not. So
I got to say something about that one. That was a horrible throw, but I did not realize Jerry Jeudy was that fast. He made that safety look bad, dude. He burned him to the end zone.
Yeah, that safety was basically in front of him, and Jeudy did a little stutter stop and then just gassed it and beat him. So
I'm actually pretty sure that was the safety that Javonte broke his arm later in the game, so he was having a rough day.
That poor guy. A guy that I love this week, Mike Williams. I think he's going to bounce back phenomenally. We are expecting Keenan Allen to be ruled out. He's on a short week with a hamstring injury. He's dealt with hammy injuries before, so I would expect him to be smart and sit this out because he has done the old rush back re-aggravation situation before. So Mike Williams, this dude's just too big, too athletic, too good to not get targets from Justin Herbert. And it is weird because Herbert loves to spread the ball around. But as weird as this sounds, Mike Williams was tied for first on targets on the Chargers. But the funny part about that stat is there was 7 guys tied for first on targets. Yes, I heard that right. 7 guys had 4 targets for the Chargers, being the most targets for a player on the Chargers. So really odd there. Part of it was because Keenan Allen did go down, and I would have expected Allen to have been the top, target leader. But Mike Williams, he's got to do better, and I think he will.
Absolutely.
Give me a wide receiver that you're not too high on. I see a couple in here.
I think we talked about all of these, honestly, but we can add Thielen in there. I can talk about Thielen. I usually am a big Thielen guy, but with with Justin Jefferson just demanding 12 targets a game. I just don't see how any other wide receiver on that team is going to be startable. I don't see it to be changing. It looked like Justin Jefferson was going to destroy anybody in his path, no matter who it is. So I really expect that to continue. So I wouldn't look for Thielen to be too productive going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Thielen, it seems to be the Justin Jefferson show. And then if they get down to it, it's like Dalvin Cook's going to get his share too. So when's that going to come? Cook, I think he went like 17 for 90 and had, 20 yards through the air. So he was pretty much just missing that touchdown that, Jefferson stole both. And then also the one guy that I would kind of keep an eye on, Irv Smith Jr., he had a goose egg, was pretty much said to not be involved on purpose. The coach was like, this was the game plan. It wasn't just he was bad. So the more Irv gets involved, the less Thielen will go down. And not to mention, Thielen's just getting older and getting closer to that wide receiver cliff. So could be the end for him. Another guy that's getting towards that cliff, Tyler Lockett. In case you did not see any of this Monday Night Football game, he was just not really there. He had 4 targets, 3 catches. Geno Smith is a guy that's like, if you're not completely wide open, I'm probably not going to throw it to you. I make all the right throws. I don't make anything risky except for that one where he rolled out to the complete left and then threw it to the complete right, which was crazy throw, but it almost worked. So for me, Tyler Lockett, I hate to say it, but I think he's on his last legs. I'd love to see the Seahawks trade him come trade deadline because he is an excellent trade candidate. He would fit like perfectly on, the Packers, the Ravens, maybe even. I'm sure there's a few other teams that would like him. And Lockett's nearing the end of his career. So Lockett, I'm not starting him until he finds a new team or just shows me a couple games that he's still there. All right. Let's wrap things up with some tight end talk. One guy really stood out to me, Gerald Everett. Had a touchdown, led the team in targets with 4, ironically. He seemed to be like a guy that Justin Herbert could trust. so to speak. We saw Justin Herbert really cling to Jared Cook last year and Donald Parham. So if Parham is, still banged up, which he missed last week, I think he already was ruled out for this Thursday Night Football game. Maybe not. He might be doubtful, but it's not looking good for him. So Gerald Everett against the Chiefs, who allowed a touchdown to Zach Ertz. I know it was pretty much a garbage time end touchdown, but I expect this game to be high scoring. One of the higher over-unders on this week. So Gerald Everett, I think he gets his fair share.
Absolutely. One that I love, Hayden Hurst, man. Hayden Hurst, I've always kind of liked him. He was on the Falcons, so it his targets kind of went down, but he got targeted second most times on the Bengals, only behind Jamar Chase. I think he had 8 targets. He only had 5 catches for 46 yards, but if he's going to be on the field that whole time, because I think he was on the field for the majority of the snaps, Hayden Hurst could start running away and start being a sleeper tight end and start every week.
Caught me on mute there again. But yeah, Hayden Hurst, he was a dude that when the Bengals acquired him, he was like a sneaky guy because he could have some upside. We saw what Joe Burrow liked in CJ Uzomah, and of course Uzomah's not there anymore. So, especially if Higgins or Boyd or even Chase, one of those guys are missing games, Higgins might not be there next week. So Hurst, he's a solid option. Real quick to wrap things up, a couple tight ends that I'm not too high on. The biggest one, Mike Gesicki, he's probably droppable. He's a guy that I was not high on coming into the season, and he absolutely proved me right. He had 1 catch for 6 yards, I think just 2 targets. I want to say he was out-targeted by Durham Smythe, which was crazy because Smythe was a guy that they tried to trade, and then it was axed because he failed his physical. So Mike Gesicki, I'm not sold on him. He needs to have, he had 1 catch for 1 yard and 1 target. So yeah, it's bad. A fullback had 2 targets. Terry Sherfield had 2 targets. Durham Smythe had 2 targets. Raheem Mostert had a target. Mike Gesicki, sit him on your bench, trade him, drop him. Not a fan.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of the same thing with this next guy, this dude, Dawson Knox. You would think that he might be good with that high-powered offense, but when you got Stephon Diggs and Davis and Crowder and McKenzie all playing well and they're all getting targets, there's just not a lot of room for the tight end to get some. That I think he had 2 targets that whole game, and they were throwing the ball the entire game. So that's also somebody that I would look to replace as well.
Yeah, agreed. And luckily the tight end position, it's kind of like if you don't have one of the big 3, it's not a big deal. But what you can't do is start goose eggs. And Dawson Knox, 1 point. Mike Gesicki, like 1 point if you're in a PPR league. Not the best performances and will likely took you down this week. But that's all we got for today's episode. As always, you can check me out on Twitter at EverydayFFB. You can check out my boy E at Eric07294. Always posting great fantasy football content and Saints content. If you're a Saints fan, check out Fantasy Six Pack at Fantasy Six Pack. They got all sorts of good podcasts, articles, great stuff going on. And if you like the show, give us a subscribe. Fantasy Six Pack Network is a part of us. So if you're subscribing to them, you're subscribing to us. We love it all. Solid first week, baby.
I love it. Football's back, baby.
I know. Ready for next week? I am stoked. Got a great Thursday night football game. All right, real quick. Chargers or Chiefs? Who do you got?
I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. Still playing that well. I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
That's what I think too, especially at home. Mr. 5 touchdowns. I'd love for a shootout, but you never know with these primetime games.
We're 1-0. Let's keep it going.
Yes, sir. All right. We will catch you guys all next week.